Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu, להדליק ner, shel yom tov.
Thank you, Chazan. We turn now to Festival Kiddush, which is found in our festival book on page 386. If you are enjoying some yain, please feel free to raise your glass. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol am veromemanu mikol leshon v'kidshanu b'mitzvotav moadim lesimcha חגים וזמנים לששון, את יום חג השבועות הזה, זמן מתן תורתנו מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ומועדי קודשך, בשמחה ובששון הנחלתנו, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. And we begin our evening service on page 394 in the festival book, or 28 in the Shabbat book. Please feel free to rise, either to your feet or in your hearts, whichever is your most comfortable. Barechu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. We continue with Ma'ariv on page 396. Baruch Adonai ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים page 398 Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael. Sinai was only the beginning. The Torah never ceased to grow. In every age it has been purified and enlarged. It has become permanent core and expanding periphery. It expands as the horizon of our vision grows. Nor are God's revelations confined to Israel. God has been the inspiration of the great and good among all families of the earth. God's love and guidance reach out to all the world. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam balayla ve'ahavatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Israel. We're on page 400 in the festival book and 34 in Shabbat. Rabbi Feldman? Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. As we turn to the next page, Rabbi Feldman will lead us in the Ve'ahavta. You may be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בהם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Amen. We continue on page 406 in the festival book with the words of redemption, Mi Chamocha. Cantor Friedlander.
By orchestra. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות, עושה פלא, נורא תהילות, עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, חוקי הים לפני משה ומרים. זרי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני ישראל.
Amen. We continue on page 408 with the evening prayer for peace. Hashkivenu, page 42 in the Shabbat book. Hashkivenu Adonai Shalom Rabbeinu V'Solim Shkachamecha V'Taknei B'Tzadovim V'Fanecha Ki El Shomrenu Matzilenu Atao Ki El Chanun V'Rachum Atah Ushmor Tzeteinu Uvoinu L'chaim U'Shalom Me'ata Ve'ad Olam. Baruch atah Adonai, hapurei sukkot shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Especially in these moments, in these difficult times, we ask God to spread the shelter of peace over us and over all of our people, Israel, and especially over Jerusalem. As we turn to page 468 in the festival book for the Amidah, we continue with our private meditations for a few moments, and we'll rejoin one another for a final plea for peace from heaven. Adonai, Savatai Tivtach, Ufi Yagite Hilatecha. If you finished your private meditations, feel free to be seated as Cantor Friedlander leads us in a final plea for peace and wholeness, peace that is so greatly needed right now. If you're still continuing your private meditations, feel free to do so at your own pace.
Oseh shalom, shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, v'akol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Oseh shalom, shalom bimrama. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'akol Yisrael ve'imru amen. V'akol Yisrael amen.
Thank you, Cantor Friedlander. At this time, we'd like to offer prayers for healing for those who are ill in our midst, those recovering from traumas of the body and traumas to the soul. We're especially keeping in our mind Harav Jerry Blum. Feel free to add other people's names in the chat bar so we can keep them in our thoughts and our prayers. We're turning to page 523 in the Shabbat book, 253 in the Shabbat book and 511 in the full Mishkan Tefillah. Misheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu Mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. May they all have a speedy recovery of refuat nefesh u'refuat haguf, and let us say Amen. And with that, I turn things over to Rabbi Feldman.
Such a blessing to be here together. I mean, Sinai is a moment of communal unity. And so to be with members of Temple Isaiah and Temple Beth-El together feels very fitting. We're about to see a fun video of one of our amazing Temple Beth-El members, David Kagan, who's going to tell us a little bit about cheesecake, because it's always good to start your study with some sweetness. But before that, Mayor Feldman will say a few words, Harav Mayor, about why dairy and Shavuot. Why do they go together?
Exactly. This is the $1 million question that everyone wants to know about Shavuot. Before I just share two very brief little fun ideas, I want to thank Rabbi Cantor Friedlander and Cantor Davis. It's a pleasure to get to be in your prayerful hands and souls. And thank you for a lovely opening of this. And to Temple Isaiah, it's a pleasure to see all of you again. And hopefully the next time we will be in person and not on Zooming. And welcome. It's great to see all of our Beth-El folks also. So two very quick ideas. There is this wonderful moment in Shir Shirim, Song of Songs, in which Torah is likened to milk, like honey and milk. The Torah lies under your tongue. Davash v'chalav tachat l'shonech. And just as milk has the ability to fully sustain the body of a human being, certainly a little child, there is this sweet and profound idea that Torah provides the spiritual nourishment necessary for a human person. You know this expression, hafochba v'afochba dekuleba. You turn the Torah, and you can find everything, every question, every doubt, every fear, every loss, every pain, every dream, every opportunity, every aspiration. It's all there. And so Torah is likened to milk, and to prove it, I want to do one fun thing. Beth-El folks know how much I like, whoops, where did it go? Let me try to do this. How much I like gematria. Where did my screen go? Oh, here I am. What's the connection between milk and Shavuot? So milk we have here. Can everyone see the screen? See the little highlighted text? And here's the Hebrew word for milk is chalav, chet lamed vet. And so the gematria question is like, how does gematria help us? So chalav, the gematria of chalav, chet is. The chet is 8, the lamed is 30, the bet is 2. It all adds up to 40. What's the significance of 40? How does this help us? Moses spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and so therefore there must be, says this brilliant, deep, clever, playful Jewish mind, there must be a connection to the 40 days of Moses receiving Torah and milk. Okay, so there you have your little gematria lesson. There we have a little connection between milk and Sinai and Torah. And so, Shavuot is the holiday of dairy. And there's no dairy food that can compare to cheesecake. That's an objective truth for sure. And so, Tara, I think you're or Jackie, someone's going to share with us a couple videos about
cheesecake moments. The first will be from David Kagan, and then we're going to close it off with Roberta Lulav. So here's the first one, a little cheesecake demo.
Sorry, bear with me while I grab it. That's
Receiving Torah is not easy. You have to listen very closely. Jackie, we coming? We getting it?
I am frozen.
Got it. I got you.
Thank you.
This video we're going to be making a crepe cake. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. So enjoy. Begin by mixing together 1.5 cups of flour, 2/3 cup of cocoa powder, and 1/4 cup of sugar. Then heat up 3 cups of milk until it almost reaches a boiling point, and melt
I
6
think we can see it,
tablespoons of
Jackie.
butter. Then crack 6 eggs into the flour mixture. Whisk until smooth, then begin slowly adding the milk and the butter a little bit at a time.
So we could go into the
Now
tikkun
it's
leil
time
right
to
now and do it
mix.
later. Does that make sense?
Add about 1/4 cup of batter at a time and flip after about 30 seconds.
Okay, so it looks like her screen share is frozen. So we're going to come back.
After
So
about another 30
maybe
seconds,
just
take off the crepes.
switch back.
Cantor, were you able to, I thought you were, are you able to launch this or no? I thought you were
After
saying you
the
were.
crepes are in the fridge,
There we are, David Kagan.
Shall I restart this or?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you hear it?
No, or I couldn't.
Okay, hang on. I will screen share once more. I think there's sometimes something that happens when we screen share. Okay.
Hey guys, my name is Chef D, and in this video we're going to be making a crepe cake. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. So enjoy. Begin by mixing together 1.5 cups of flour, 2/3 cup of cocoa powder, and 1/4 cup of sugar. Then heat up 3 cups of milk until it almost reaches a boiling point, and melt 6 tablespoons of butter. Then crack 6 eggs into the flour mixture. Whisk until smooth, then begin slowly adding the milk and the butter a little bit at a time. Now it's time to cook the crepes. Add about 1/4 cup of batter at a time and flip after about 30 seconds. After about another 30 seconds, take off the crepes. After you've made the crepes, chill them in the fridge for about 30 minutes. After the crepes are in the fridge, begin whisking 8 ounces of cream cheese. Then slowly add 2 cups of powdered sugar, 1 cup at a time. Now that everything is ready, begin layering your cake. Make sure not to use too much frosting or you're going to run out too soon. Now begin to cut the edges of your cake so that everything is completely even. If you want, you could make a chocolate ganache by mixing together 1 cup of hot heavy cream and 6 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate. Add the ganache to the cake. After you finish adding the ganache, chill the cake in the fridge for 6 to 8 hours or overnight. Now it's time to cut the cake and serve.
Oh, it's delicious. Thank you, David. Thank you so much for making that. All right, I'm going to turn things back over to Rabbi Feldman.
Okay. Thanks for bearing with our technical difficulties. Can everyone see my screen and my question? Yes? Awesome. So the question we are asking tonight, I mean, there's many questions. I'm curious about the question is Sinai subversive? Is it revolutionary? And what about the book of Ruth? That's where we're diving in today. And I want to just open with some verses from the very beginning of this Sinai moment, ones that are probably familiar to us, with a little bit of a visual here. There's a little bit of, make sure you mute, Cantor, you're eating too much. We can hear you. Yeah, I got you muted. Okay. It's good. It's good. It's actually the sound of thunder that we heard. On the third day, as the morning dawned, there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud upon the mountain and a very loud blast of the horn, and the people who were in the camp trembled. This is not like a warm and sort of cozy moment. It's one of awe and trembling and intense sound. And Moses led the people out of the camp towards God, and they took their places. And the Hebrew is betachtit hahar, at the foot of the mountain. They were standing there. And so our sages do some interesting things with this image of betachtit hahar. Would one of my co-hosts read the Rashi here? What does Rashi say? What does it mean to be betachtit hahar, standing tachat, underneath the har, underneath the mountain? Mayor, you want to go?
It's too small. I don't know why I can't see it. It's too small.
Betachtit hahar, to be standing tachat, under the mountain. We all know the word tuchus. It's like being below. So it would infer that somehow the mountain has been raised up from above the earth and is hovering over the people. Beautiful.
So, Rashi, is this very small for everybody? Can everyone only see it in a very small way? Is it large enough? Yes. Okay.
I'm switching.
So according to Rashi, is this idea is actually God picked up the mountain and held it over the people's heads. It's a moment of like, are you going to take this Torah? If you don't take it, I'm gonna, drop the mountain on your head. It's like, this is not a gentle image. It's not necessarily an image of voluntary submission. So this is one example of how we might sometimes think about Torah. And perhaps all of us in different moments have had moments of feeling like, well, maybe Torah is something that's kind of like forced upon us, like all those mitzvot, fire and brimstone. If you don't do it, this is going to happen to you. So this tachtit hahar carries some elements of that. Enter the book of Ruth. So here she is holding her sheaves of barley. Why is it that we study the book of Ruth on Shavuot? Lots of different reasons. Partially it is because of this connection with the Omer. We've been counting and counting and counting. Suddenly we're finally at the 49th day, and Ruth is connected to the barley harvest. It can also be because she is the grandma of David, King David, Melech David, whose yard site we are now upon with Shavuot. And there, I think, perhaps is the most essential reason, certainly the one that resonates for me very deeply, as I myself am a Jew by choice. The idea is Ruth is this first convert, this person who says, okay, I'm signing up for this. And actually, the moment at Sinai is a moment when our entire people said, okay, we're in. At some level, we're all Jews by choice. We are all Ruth on this holiday. So In a moment, we're going to be breaking into discussion groups and really looking at the text of this incredibly gorgeous, eloquent, moving book of Ruth. But before that, I'm going to show just a quick video that gives an overview of the story. Many of us are familiar with it, but I think this one summarizes it very well in just a few minutes, and it's always good to get the aerial view. So listen up.
Involved in the day-to-day joys and hardships of our lives. There are three main characters in the book: Naomi, the widow, Ruth, the Moabite, and Boaz, the Israelite farmer. And their story is told in 4 chapters that are beautifully designed. Let's dive in and see how this all unfolds. Chapter 1 opens with this line: "In the days when the judges ruled." And it reminds us of the very dark and difficult days from the book of Judges. And here we meet an Israelite family in Bethlehem, struggling to survive through a famine. And so in search of food, they move on to the land of Moab, Israel's ancient enemy. And there the father of the family dies, and the sons marry 2 Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. And then the sons, they die too. And so they leave only Naomi and these new daughters-in-law. And so Naomi, she has no reason to stay anymore. And so she tells her new daughters-in-law that she's moving back home. And Naomi, she knows that the life of an unmarried foreign widow in Israel is going to be very hard. And so she compels the women to stay behind. Orpah agrees, but Ruth does not. She shows remarkable loyalty to Naomi. And she says, "Wherever you go, I'm going to go. Your people will become my people, and your God will become my God." And so the two of them return to Israel together. And the chapter concludes with Naomi changing her name to Mara, which means bitter in Hebrew, and she laments her tragic fate. Chapter 2 begins with Naomi and Ruth discussing where they're going to find food. And it just so happens to be the beginning of the barley harvest. And so Ruth goes out to look for food, and it just so happens that she ends up picking grain in the field of a man named Boaz, who just so happens to be Naomi's relative. We're told that Boaz is a man of noble character, and he notices Ruth. And so after finding out more about her story, he shows remarkable generosity to her. He makes these special provisions so that the immigrant Ruth can gather grain in his field. And in doing so, Boaz is actually obeying an explicit command of the Torah to show generosity to the immigrant and the poor. Boaz is so impressed by Ruth's loyalty to Naomi. He prays for her that God will reward her for her boldness. So Ruth comes home that day, and Naomi finds out that she met Boaz, and she is thrilled. She says Boaz is their family redeemer. Now, this family redeemer thing, this was a cultural practice in Israel where if a man in the family died and he left behind a wife or children or land, it was the family redeemer's responsibility to marry that widow, to take up the land and protect that family. So Naomi, she begins to hope that perhaps there might still be a future for her family. Chapter 3 begins with Naomi and Ruth making a plan to get Boaz to notice their situation. So Ruth is going to stop wearing clothes of a grieving widow, and she's going to show signs that she's available to be married. And so Ruth goes to meet Boaz on the farm that night. And as she approaches, Boaz wakes up and he's totally startled. And Ruth makes her intentions very clear. She asks if Boaz will redeem Naomi's family and marry her. Boaz is once again amazed by Ruth's loyalty to Naomi and her family, and he calls Ruth a woman of noble character. It's the same term used to describe the woman of Proverbs 31. So Boaz tells Ruth to wait until the next day. He will redeem both Ruth and Naomi legally before the town elders. And so the chapter ends with Ruth returning to Naomi, and they marvel together at all of these recent events. In chapter 4, it all comes together. It turns out, at the last minute, Boaz discovers there is a family member who's closer to Naomi than he is, and he's actually eligible before him to redeem the family. But at the last second, this family member finds out that he's going to have to marry Ruth, the Moabite, and so he declines. But Boaz, remember, he knows Ruth's true character, and so he acquires the family property of Naomi, and he marries Ruth. And so just at the beginning, how Ruth was loyal to Naomi's family, so now Boaz is loyal to Naomi's family as well. The story concludes with a reversal of all of the tragedies from chapter 1. So the death of the husband and the sons is reversed as Ruth is married again and gives birth to a new son, granting joy to Naomi. And this symmetry between the opening and the closing, it's even more remarkable. So remember, the opening tragedy was followed by a great act of loyalty on the part of Ruth. And that is now matched by Boaz's act of loyalty that leads to the family's final restoration. And this symmetry, it highlights the design of the internal chapters as well. So each of the chapters begins with Naomi and Ruth making a plan for their future. And that's followed by a providential meeting between Ruth and Boaz. And each chapter concludes with Naomi and Ruth rejoicing at what's taken place. This story is beautifully designed. And that design actually connects with a really interesting feature of the story. And that's how little God is mentioned. Right? The characters talk about God a few times, but the narrator actually never once mentions God doing anything directly in the story. And that's its brilliance. Because God's providence is at work behind every scene of this story, weaving together the circumstances and choices of all these characters. So Naomi, her tragedy leads her to think that God is punishing her, but actually the whole story is about God's mission to restore her designed. And that design actually connects with a really interesting feature of the story. And that's how little God is mentioned. Right? The characters talk about God a few times, but the narrator never once mentions God doing anything directly in the story. And that's its brilliance. Because God's providence is at work behind every scene of this story, weaving together the circumstances and choices of all these characters. So Naomi, her tragedy leads her to think that God is punishing her, but actually the whole story is about God's mission to restore her and her family. And he's doing so through Ruth, through her boldness and loyalty, which brings healing to Naomi's life, but not without Boaz, who's a no-nonsense farmer who's full of generosity and loyalty. And so God uses his integrity combined with Ruth's boldness to save the future of the story. And that's how little God is mentioned.
Okay, we're going to stop there. You got a good taste. So I want to bring us back to this idea of, okay, so B'tachtit hahar, maybe Torah is all about having, you know, these rules that are bearing down on us that we have to follow or else, fire and brimstone. Or maybe there's something upside down. Tachtit hahar could also mean that the mountain itself was being turned upside down. Maybe there's something about not only the narratives of Torah, but the narrative of Ruth that is so connected to Shavuot, that is deeply subversive. I used that word in the beginning, that deeply questions some of the mores that we take for granted. So over the past number of months, I've been breaking my teeth on this very brilliant book, which I don't know if it's translated yet, but it's called The Seven Matriarchs by Yochi Brandeis Geffen. And she looks at multiple matriarchal characters, and for the purposes of our study tonight, of Ruth, and what are some of the ways that she turns our expectations upside down. So we are going to be exploring a few of these in breakout rooms, and I'm going to just kind of lay the groundwork before we dive in. I think in many ways, one of the premises of our world is that it's a dog-eat-dog world, right? That's why Survivor, the reality show, works so well. Who's going to survive? Who's on whose team? Who, you know, what I take, you can't have. This sense of a world of intense competition and treachery and maybe trickery. What does Ruth do with that societal norm? The second one we're going to look at is the Cinderella story. We know it well. Perhaps Ruth is the obvious Cinderella maiden, a poor, widowed Moabite with no family. We're going to look at that societal norm. How might that be turned upside down in the book of Ruth? We're also going to consider some of the norms of patriarchy that are so much a part of Tanakh and Torah. And lastly, tribalism, which is ancient and goodness knows very relevant today. And so with the help of our wonderful Jackie Wadsworth, we're going to break into 4 breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. We're going to look a little more closely at certain texts from the Book of Ruth and explore some of these societal mores, be they the Cinderella complex, the survivor complex, tribalism, or patriarchy. So just take a moment, take a breath as we go into our breakout rooms. And group leaders, you're going to get a warning. And when you're about 2 minutes out from coming back into the full group, that'll be your time to choose someone who can relay some of the fruits of your discussion to the group as a whole. Okay, breakout rooms, go for it.
And if you aren't getting a breakout room, it's because you're going to be staying in the main room with Rabbi Tara.
Lucky you.
If you didn't get an invitation to join a breakout room, that's why.
But if you did get an invitation, accept the invitation and go into your room. And if you're in the breakout room with me, feel free to unmute so I can hear your voices. We can introduce ourselves to each other. There may be some who know each other and some who
Okay,
don't.
Rabbi, you're all set. You have your
Oh, I
people.
got a nice group. So I have Terry and Shelly and Randy and Stu, I think. Is that everybody in the group? Awesome. So feel free to unmute. This book, which I am reading incredibly slowly in Hebrew, but I'm very proud that I'm reading it in Hebrew. She brilliantly talks about, okay, who is Cinderella? Okay, we all know the story. In your collective minds, what do you think? What are the defining features? And Jackie, feel free if you want to chime in. What are the defining? Here, let me put this into presentation mode. What are the defining features of Cinderella? Like what makes her Cinderella? Any thoughts?
That is such an interesting question. I think we just look at the love story sometimes, but when you said that, I kind of thought, well, what made her really kind and grateful while she was being pummeled by her stepsisters?
So interesting, this kind of quality, which I actually think relates so deeply to Ruth, is this kind of internal chesed, might be the Hebrew word, this goodness of soul. So you're going to the spiritual, which I love. That's where I want to take us, because Ruth is the whole story is so profoundly spiritual. But if you had to go for just like the trappings of what makes a Cinderella tale or a modern Cinderella tale, right? Same idea. What defines a Cinderella?
Come on, Shelley.
All right. Well, at first, Cinderella was well situated with her parents until her mother died, and then she became displaced into this new family. And she's really, in that way, she is a stranger in a strange land, because she is her circumstances have been reduced. She's not cared for. She is trapped. I don't think Ruth felt that way. Ruth felt the opposite. She saw it as an opportunity. And,
Right.
Yeah.
But so I think those are all this sense of, I mean, it is interesting. Many Cinderellas maybe started as something, but the sense of reduced, trapped, powerless.
And strange, and a stranger.
A stranger, right? She's the outsider with
Right.
her stepsisters. Resonates very well with Ruth the Moabitess, right?
Right.
Any other features to our Cinderella of ancient or Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts variety?
Like not worthy of what the others have. They don't really think that they're worthy of, like her sisters. She doesn't really think she should be where her sisters are. Thinks that that's maybe her place.
Beautiful. So no places, I think a very important word. Unworthy, powerless, no place. She doesn't. And if you want to go for the modern, Julia Roberts, Richard Gere, she's a prostitute, like a very low level. I think this. So yeah, but what about the guy? And
But
what?
I don't know. She still has a lot of goodness inside her. Obviously, she had a good childhood. She still has hope.
Right.
She
has hope.
still projects a softness, not an anger.
And I think that that's like such a powerful parallel with Ruth, who in a way, we have Ruth, she's the ultimate Cinderella. Not only is she a non-Jew, she's a Moabite. A Moabite is like the hated nation, the product of incest, the dangerous, she's the outsider of the outsider of the outsider, right? So if you want to talk about being displaced, low status, unworthy, Moabite, if you have that on your forehead, you're the ultimate Cinderella. So for sure, that piece.
I get Terry, I think that Terry, something you just said is really, it's really interesting. That is, what's the word we're using? Not countercultural. What's your word, Tara?
Subversive.
Subversive, right? Terry, you asked you didn't ask the question. You kind of like, just in your kishkis, feel that that Ruth comes from a good family. I don't remember exactly the words you used 3 minutes ago or two.
She must have been brought up well.
Yeah, exactly. And that thought feels kind of subversive. Like the Torah, and Tara, you just said this in your own way, but the Torah does not think of Moabite families as, raising, children in an environment that's thoughtful and kind. And so that as well adds to the subversive quality or subversiveness.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing that out. It's a radical notion that a Moabite would have sort of morality, loyalty, chesed, compassion, all of that. But also to talk about, listen, she did have a husband. She did have a father. But we know in biblical society, a woman who is a widow, who's no longer a virgin, who has been displaced from her parents' home, and who doesn't have kids is nothing. Talk about scrubbing the floor or whatever she's doing in this image. That's what a Moabite is. So there's a lot of Cinderella stuff going on in this tale of Ruth. However, I think there's two things that haven't come out, and this is partially certainly this brilliant author that I was reading, but one thing is that she needs a Richard Gere. She needs a Richard Gere. Every Cinderella needs a prince, right? Like, that's obvious. That's the part, she's waiting for that slipper, for that. That's why she needs the dress, so she can get the prince. It's a very important aspect of the Cinderella narrative. The other thing is she has got to be good looking. That is a really important, I'm sorry, if Julia Roberts wasn't Julia Roberts, she'd still be working the streets, right? So there are ways in which our Ruth tale aligns beautifully with our Disney, expectations. We have a wonderful woman who's very, with a good heart, who has been downtrodden. Now, when we think about pretty women in the Torah, there are quite a number that come to mind. I don't know. We have another rabbi on the screen, so I don't know if others come to your mind, Mayor. But like when we hear about Sarah, she's gorgeous, right? That's why Abraham has to pretend she's the sister. Rebecca, from the moment she's filling the jar, she's a very beautiful. Yeah, we know that that's like, okay, she's absolutely beautiful. Rachel, okay, she was the beautiful sister, and certainly Bathsheba, and on and on and on. We have all these, I don't know if you want to call all of these Cinderellas, but the idea in Torah is for sure, if you want to get the prince or the patriarch, as the case may be, you have to be beautiful. That's just kind of how these stories work. And what this author does is actually says, you know what? Something different is going on in the book of Ruth. So I want to quickly divide us. Stu, will you be the narrator and just read the black text? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, just wait a minute. I'm gonna assign. We'll just keep it gendered. Mayor, will you be Boaz?
Yeah, that's blue. That's blue.
Yeah, I'll be the let's see. Shelley, will you be the Reapers, and also there's like the head of the Reapers. It's gold and purple.
Okay.
And Terry, will you be, oh no, Randy, I didn't do you.
Randy be Boaz. Randy, you be Boaz.
Randy, you be Boaz, and Terry, you can be Ruth. Okay, let's go through and read this. And I want you to tell me what here is different from Cinderella, because I'm telling you, this book is an awesomely subversive tale. Okay, go for it, Stu.
Okay, presently Boaz arrived from Bethlehem. He greeted the reapers. Someone else supposed
This
to.
is you, and this is you, Randy.
Boaz, yeah.
Oh,
Randy,
the Lord be with you.
And they responded.
The Lord bless you.
Boaz said to the servant who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose girl is that?" The servant in charge of the reapers replied,
She is a Moabite girl who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab.
Listen to me, daughter. Don't go to glean in another field. Don't go elsewhere, but stay here close to my girls. Keep your eyes on the field they are reaping and follow them. I have ordered the men not to molest you. And when you are thirsty, go to the jars and drink some of the water that the men have drawn.
She prostrated herself with her face to the ground and said to him,
Why are you so, oh, sorry. Is that purple?
Is that
Or pink?
it's pink. Sorry.
Sorry.
Why are you so kind as to single me out when I am a foreigner?
I have been told of all that you did for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and the land of your birth and came to a people you had not known before. May the Lord reward your deeds. May you have a full recompense from the Lord and the God of Israel, under whose wings you have sought refuge.
So I don't know, before we even go back to the Cinderella thing, does anything strike you in this little, so this is the moment, this is the ball, okay? This is the ball.
Well, now they're talking about God. I mean, the Lord before.
Well, he notices her right away and gives her special protection and advice. So he's already taken her under his wing.
Beautiful. Now here's a question. Does it tell us why she was noticed?
Well,
I don't think so.
No.
No. He doesn't.
he knows the story. He knows that
I mean, we don't, sorry to interrupt you, Shelley. All the other Torah things I told you, they made very clear. She was
Right.
beautiful, she was beautiful, she was beautiful, and she was beautiful. They used different words, but they were very clear. We do not see that here. What did you want to say, Shelley?
Well, I was just going to say that although he asked who she was, he already knew the story of Ruth. So maybe he was seeing the inner value of her.
Beautiful. And that's exactly what he says. I have been told of all you did. What he is drawn to her. What are the qualities that draw Boaz to his Cinderella?
She was a good person. She was kind. She took care of others.
She took care of her mother-in-law, who she had no obligation to any longer.
This incredible loyalty. He says to her, my God, you were so loyal. You were so loyal. And I actually think it's an interesting kind of a moment because, well, I'm gonna hold that thought. So one thing that I think makes Ruth different from Cinderella, we know all the ways that she was, okay, she's powerless, she was poor, she maybe had a good heart. But one thing that makes her not like Cinderella is that, first of all, Boaz is no Prince Charming. The dude is old. I mean, our sages say he was 80.
Yikes.
But he had yichus, he had status. He could rectify her profoundly difficult economic situation. But this is not Disney, okay? This book puts it so beautifully. He's like, yeah, so what if he had a lot of hair and perfect teeth? That's not what she needed. She needed someone who could guide her family, who was experiencing profound loss and famine and a whole range of other things. Another thing that we've just explored is that the looks, perhaps they were there. Maybe she had a great figure, but it's not mentioned. That is not the point. That is not what brings him to her. There's a beauty in the video I showed you. It had this kind of figure 8 that kept drawing through the figures. I've heard it described as like an amazing, a beautiful golden thread of chesed that binds all the characters together. Everyone does kind of like the right thing in these moments. But I think another amazing thing is who is, I mean, I have the answer here in my notes, but like, who is the first Prince Charming for our Cinderella Ruth?
Who is the first?
Who's the Prince Charming? What's the first love relationship for our
Naomi's son?
And after he dies?
Oh.
Then it's Naomi, who's not.
It's Naomi. It is the loyalty between women that precedes any Prince Charming that comes in. It's
have to
a
choose.
very radical thing.
We're moving out of the
Oh, people are popping back.
no, we're gonna start moving out. So who wants? Shelley, you talk.
No, not me.
Not me.
Well, let me say this, that I think that Ruth has amazing qualities of perception. She's flexible. And I think she knows what she wants.
Why did she choose an old man then? Because she's going to be in the same position again shortly in a family without a provider. That's.
But
Well,
she was able to keep it in the family because he was connected, which was essential in biblical society.
Yeah.
That you didn't want, to marry out. So she deftly keeps it in the family.
And was able to keep Naomi's property in the family.
Exactly. So there's a deftness to her. It's a very important point you bring, Stu. We didn't assign I did a lot of talking. Does anyone want to report back from our group?
Ooh.
And here we all are.
Here we all are. Yay. Okay, awesome. Welcome, everybody. I hope you had enriching discussions. We're thinking about an elegant, loyalty-laden, chesed-laden book, the Megillat Ruth, that very much seems to abide by all kinds of rules. People behave in in these, they abide by societal mores, but there are many things going on in Megillat Ruth that are quite countercultural. So I don't know, can I have a volunteer from, I don't know, Cantor Adams Breakout Room to share any thoughts that arose from your discussion? Or Cantor Adam himself, whatever works.
I'm going to let either Howard or Alice and Victor or the Millers unmute themselves. And if anyone wants to say something, I'll give you 3 seconds to unmute.
And then what?
How would you be thoughtful?
Okay, so something that we teased out a little bit about the enmity between the Judahites and the Moabites that goes way back to the days of Abraham and Lot. That the Moabites are kind of these backward incestual cousins that the Judahites don't really want to acknowledge as being related, so they're othered, and there's something about Ruth being, even though she's a ger tzedek, a righteous convert, when she comes back, she's not quite accepted until she sort of suborns her own identity and voice and her own active nature. When originally she says, "Where you go, I go. Your people are my people." And by the end, she's not taking action. She's kind of realized that she has to pull back and become part of the process and the people to the extent that everything happens to her. So, and we find that interesting.
Thank you, Cantor. And Chazanit Friedlander, tell us, is there someone from your group, or do you want to share any fruits from your discussion?
Yes, Jonathan Wagner is going to speak for us.
Okay, you sure you want that? So I guess what we came away with mostly was that a lot of times, I guess in the Torah, we don't really see what women are thinking or feeling a lot. And this kind of gave us more of an insight where it was more of the focus. It's usually more focused on men in the Torah and other places. And this was more of a focus on the women and them being kind of active and decisive about what they felt and what they decided to do in this story. And what else am I missing? Feel free to jump in, anyone.
Lee, do you want to add something? Lee?
There was a lot of talk about the concept of sisterhood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Also. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like the support of the women between each other and for each other was a big thing that we took as a takeaway. I don't know. I don't remember what else.
That's great. I think you covered a lot. Okay, let's move. David, tell us about your group.
Well, I got to share a group with 3 very, very insightful, intelligent, strong women. And we talked about some of the nature of the transactional nature of life. I'm going to ask Karen, could I ask you to share a little bit about transactional beneficence, which is raises us well above the survivor mode.
Right. From the get-go, a couple of us questioned the basic premise of a survival mentality. And I was saying that all the psychosocial research demonstrates that humanity, as juvenile a species as we still are, would not have gotten this far if we hadn't really seen the necessity to cooperate, to work together, to learn how to make fire, etc., etc. And the what we call benevolent self-interest, that there's always got to be something basic human need that you tap into that elicits motivations of people to cooperate, to get the general good or the better will going.
Which,
So,
and I think that what Ruth and Roberta also brought to that was that there is self-interest involved, but the difference between the survivor mentality is that we learn from the book of Ruth that by helping someone else, we can also benefit. They don't have to lose by us doing all right. So it is somewhat transactional, but not in the way of the zero-sum game of survivor.
Beautiful. This sort of the one act of Hesed builds upon another to this kind of, we go from a place of complete depletion and emptiness to a place of kind of fullness and resolution. Thank you, David. Anyone from my group? I was a bad group leader. I didn't assign. A shot. We were talking about Cinderella and all the ways in which Ruth is very much a Cinderella and maybe not so much.
Shelley's hiding. I could give a summary and please flesh it out for me, Rabbi Feldman. Okay, so we were comparing Ruth to Cinderella, and Ruth was Moabite, and considered, as we already heard, another backward, low life, not such good words. And yet she must have had a much better beginning in life than we would expect. And she had something inside her. She was good, she was kind, she seemed grateful. And it didn't hurt that she was probably beautiful, as we spoke of many of the women are portrayed in the Torah. But she was loyal and loved Naomi and needed to save the family. And she went to Boaz and reached out to him and gave herself basically to him, all because of her love for Naomi. She was a Jew by choice, and I think somebody else has to bring it to an end.
You summarized a ton. I mean, one thing I'm going to put in there is she could have been beautiful, but one thing that I think is very interesting, when you peel off the layers, it's not, her beauty was not the driving thing, which makes it a radical text. It was something about her loyalty, and her loyalty, not initially to a man, that's we're used to the Prince Charming. It was her loyalty to a woman that drives the entire thing. Very different. Anyone else in the group want to say a word or two before we move?
Well, just to emphasize what you highlighted for us, Tara, that she could have been beautiful, but unlike all the other texts with the 5 other, central biblical women, the text goes out of its way to tell us how beautiful they were. And it never says anything about Ruth's physical beauty. And that omission is important to pay attention to. And so you and the book, the text you've been reading, it's powerful.
Well, it helped us emphasize, or it emphasized her goodness.
Exactly.
Loyalty.
Brought out that beautiful,
took away the beauty stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that idea of that goodness, that chesed, is part of all of the breakout groups that we've had. There's something about a goodness that defines every moment of this text, and I think is what makes it redemptive. It's interesting, the way the chapter on Ruth begins, it says, it starts off like any patriarchal tale. And it lists, there was a man and he went because there was a famine. And within the first 4 verses, all the men are gone. But it slips in, it looks patriarchal, and then just with a sleight of hand, all of a sudden, there's no more men. and the cleaving of one person to another. Oh, we're used to the cleaving. We heard about that in Genesis, right? That's what a man does to his wife. We're used to that devekut, but all of a sudden, no, it's a woman to a woman. So there's so many elements. I hope your breakout groups brought some radicalness into your understanding of this tale. I want to, as we're thinking about now, kind of going now from the book of Ruth back out to Torah in general, I want to consider the words of Rabbi Marshall T. Meyer. And this is a rabbi that I'm aware of really just because Meir had the zechut, had the incredible opportunity and of being a Marshall T. Meyer Fellow at Congregation B'nai Jeshurun back 2 decades ago in the city. And so here was this is a little piece that was written by Claudia Kryman, who's a rabbi in Brookline. And she talks about Rabbi Meyer's role. Actually, Claudia's mother was one of the victims of the terrorist act in the Jewish Community Center where she lived in Chile. Thank you. So she has a very strong connection both to Rabbi Meyer and to human rights. I know, Meir, do you want to say anything about this rabbi before we go
Just
into teaching?
Yeah. I mean, I just share a personal experience. I never met Marshall Meyer in person. This rabbinic fellowship was created in his name, and I had the privilege of being a rabbinic fellow in the years 2002 to 2004. And I had a Shabbat meal with Marshall Meyer's wife, widowed wife, Naomi, and me and my fellow.
Well, that's ironic. Naomi?
That's pretty good.
You're right.
Okay, sorry, go on.
Wow. No, incredible. So me and my fellow, my colleague, with the other rabbinic fellow, we had dinner at their home. I mean, he had already passed, a decade before this, and lovely meal. But there was this moment we were sitting in her living room, their living room, and she looked at us with these very serious eyes, and she's like, what cause would be so important to you that you'd be willing to risk your life for it? Because that's who her husband was. He was a man who went to prisons and went to advocate for people who had nothing and before the most powerful people around. And I remember just feeling so inadequate. Like, what am I going to risk my life for? I don't know. Anyway, he was a giant and a hero and an incredibly courageous man. And Claudia has a very close relationship with the Meyer family. So go for it, Tara.
So actually, Cantor Friedlander, would you mind just reading this quote? I think it's a very powerful quote in terms of, as here we are in Shavuot, and I think it is upon us in this world to think about not the ways in which Torah might cause us to be obedient with that mountain over our heads, but how might Torah empower us to be disobedient? How might it empower us to challenge the status quo, whether it's a survivor mentality or a tribal mentality or whatever it is? How might Torah help us to question that which we think we know? So, Leslie, I'll be quiet now. Do you want to read it?
Read what?
Can you see the quote?
No.
Oh.
I was expecting something to appear.
Can others see it or no?
You need to screen share, Tara.
I am screen sharing, but I'll screen share again. Can you see it now?
No.
Oh.
I just see all of our lovely faces.
That's so weird. I'm screen sharing according to what I see. Oh, maybe is it because I'm not a co-host, or do you want to make me a host?
Yeah, you want to be a regular host again, now co-host?
Yes, yeah. Why don't you do that?
No, you can be a co-host and share it. That should work.
Yeah. It's not working. Can you see it now?
No.
Tara, you have full host permission now.
Okay, now we're going to try it. They say the third time's a charm.
You're right.
Woo! Thank you. Okay. Now, can you read it, Leslie?
In all of the years that I went to prisons visiting the prisoners in Argentina, the Bible was considered the primary subversive text, especially if it contained the original Hebrew. I could not get a Bible or a prayer book into a prison. It was considered totally subversive literature by the Argentine military. Wow.
So just, I think we often think, oh, religion is so much about obedience or about a certain kind of numbness or about being satisfied with what is. And leaders like, Rabbi Meyer, I think, remind us otherwise. I just want to show you a few very cool images. I did ripped paper midrash with a lot of help from David Wolf with our 7th graders. Here's one image of Sinai. The rule of ripped paper midrash is you can't draw, you have to just rip. So it creates very abstract images. So here we have, maybe this is a little bit of a Tahti Tahar. Everyone's standing there under that big old mountain, kind of uniform, although there's a beautiful uniformity, I think, to that Sinai moment. I asked her what the yellow was. I think she thought maybe that was the Shnei Luchot, the two tablets of the covenant. Here's some more ripped paper midrash.
Wow.
What I love about these is they bring out the radical nature of what a Sinai revelatory moment is. It's not still, it's dynamic, it's alive. It's maybe a little jagged. That was brilliant to bring feathers, David. I love this one. A Sinai moment is by definition a burning bush moment. Here we have. Do I have one more? Ah, yes. It's a moment that ignites us on fire to question what is. So thank you to our wonderful 7th graders who did the ripped paper midrash. And so here's what I'd like to do in quasi closing. We're still going to do Aleinu and Kaddish, but I'm going to just scroll through the 10 commandments. Which, ho hum, we've heard the 10 commandments, they're over the ark, we've seen it 1,000 times. In the context of your own life or our own shared life, whether it's in a communal or global or whatever scale you want to put it in, domestic, I don't care. Which of the 10 commandments do you think is most radical for our day? Which is most subversive? So I'm going to scroll through. And when you find the one that you think you feel is most radical, you can put it in the chat. Okay. I'll go slowly. I know we know many of them by heart, but see which one strikes you as the most countercultural. You don't have to write the whole thing in the chat. You can just put one word. Okay, are people putting anything in the chat? I'm having a hard time seeing. Just reminding everybody to mute.
Carol, we're putting in what again? Something that upsets
What you think, which of the 10 commandments is the most subversive for our day?
Oh, most subversive. No.
Most subversive, most radical.
Oh, I was doing the wrong.
That was very subversive of you, Alan.
I know. I'm just so tired. He's making, make his male or female slur.
And actually, as people are putting it in, I'm going to invite anyone to unmute and say out loud, which commandment do you think is the most radical and subversive for our day? Going back through them. And a reminder, feel free to just jump in.
Covet,
Say it again.
covet thy neighbor's everything.
Coveting, to not covet. What a subversive notion. Wow.
Yeah, I did owe the covet.
I'm with you, Roberta.
Yeah, threesome. Yep.
Ah, Karen, all right.
Me too. That's what I said, Roberta.
Oh.
How one deals with a stranger.
Anybody else?
I put shall not swear falsely, because our tribalism today seems to require us to accept one version of the facts. And if we don't espouse that version of the facts, we're not being loyal to our tribe.
Wow.
And so it's to be honest in trying to view things objectively is counter to the tribalism that we see so much of now.
Amazing insight. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, so I am going to.
What do you say, Rabbi?
You know what? They all feel very radical to me, quite honestly. I think for me, the mainstay is Shabbat, because I feel like all of the commandments go back to that. That if we have the capacity to hold the Sabbath sacred, everything else falls into line. So that's where I'm going to take it. I mean, but as I'm going to once again make Jackie the host, because we have a few more fun videos to show and some prayers to finish. But one thing that we are trying to do as well in our Torah celebration project is to collect words of Torah. So you do not have to know the Hebrew, but we're going to save this chat, and it's fine if you're not a Temple Beth-El member and don't really know what the Torah celebration project is. We can tell you later, but we're collecting words of Torah. So if there is an English word or a Hebrew word that you can think of that feels like it was a gem from this evening's exploration, something you want to put in your back pocket or in your neshama and take with you from our Shavuot study, please put it in the chat. And we will save that word Torah as we continue on our Torah celebration project. And now, Jackie, I believe I made you the host again, and we are going to continue with some prayers and then close out with some amazing cheesecake deliciousness, which you will experience virtually from Roberta Lulav.
Andrew, Adam, you will be leading us in Aleinu, correct?
Yes, I just spotlighted myself.
Great,
We're
thank
on
you.
page 586 in the festival book. I invite you to rise to your feet or in your hearts, whichever is most comfortable. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד. As we turn to page 598, we turn our thoughts to those who are suffering, those who are mourning and remembering the memories of loved ones. Cantor, Rabbi Tara, would you lead us in Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish?
Absolutely. And please inviting anyone to put names into the chat, what you're thinking of, and reminding us that we have the opportunity to join together for Yizkor tomorrow. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'izman kariv v'yimru.
Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam v'yimei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'yalma v'amru amen. Yehei shlam Rabbah min shamaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the one who creates harmony and peace, the He is on high, bring that to us, to all Israel, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, to all humanity. This last time.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so Jackie, can you share Roberta's slideshow? And if we want, we could have a Shavuot tune underneath it. If you're
Yes, I need to be hostability again. I can't screen share.
I just made you host, I thought.
I know.
Didn't work. Okay. Thank you, folks, for dealing with our technical difficulties. So, make host. Okay.
Did it do it? No. Oh, yes.
One more second.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, it went. It did it. Okay. Let's hope now I don't freeze this time while trying to share.
Okay. Roberta Lulov made a wonderful cheesecake, and you can see a video of it after the service if you want to stay on and eat your own cheesecake.
Okay.
While this is playing, I'm going to invite Cantor Friedlander to bring us home with the final verse of Adon Olam as we watch the cheesecake. Okay. Cantor Friedlander, feel free to unmute yourself and to...
Adonai li velo ira, ve'im ruchi geviati. Adonai li velo ira. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Safely in your hand. Ve'ado af kiruchi. Ve'iti sham ve'aira. Ve'im ruchi geviati. Adonai li velo iran, ve'im ruchi gaviati. Adonai li velo iran.
Thank you, Cantor. That was so beautiful. And I want to thank everyone who participated tonight, all of our congregants from both Temple Beth-El and Temple Isaiah. Thank you, Rabbis Feldman and David Wolf and Jackie Wadsworth, for helping us all tonight. We have a festival morning service tomorrow at 10 a.m. We have invited our friends from Temple Isaiah to join us once more. And if you need that link to sign up to get the Zoom, feel free to message me here, and I will provide that to you. For now, I'm going to wish you all a good Yontif, a Chag Sameach, as we say in the language of my people, happy cheesecake. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening and festival.
And
Thank you very much.
if you want to hang on and see a video of Roberta Lulav making a shtisel cheesecake, it's about 7 minutes. Please stay on for our own egg and grab a cheese stick or something so you can enjoy as you watch. Jackie.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing the cheesecake video, Shtizel.
Shalom. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Roberta Lulav from Temple Beth.
Ugh. Sorry, we'll try one more time. Oh, maybe it's going. Okay. Thank you all for your patience as we do this. Now we are good.
Shalom. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Roberta Lulav from Temple Beth-El. Cheesecake is the iconic Shavuot dessert, just like latkes for Hanukkah and matzah balls for Pesach. And quoting from my Rabbi Meir, eat, pray, love. Inspired by the Netflix series Shtisel, tonight I am making an Israeli crumb cheesecake. It's light, it's fluffy, and it's a no-bake recipe. The cookie crust and the crumb topping was made in my food processor. I baked it, and it's already cooled and ready for the filling. So now we're going to make the filling. To make the filling, we're going to whip heavy cream. The heavy cream. Sugar. And instant vanilla pudding. Along with vanilla extract. Okay. Okay, we're going to whip this up for until stiff peaks. Needless to say, I use my Temple Beth-El spoon because I'm on the baking committee. I can't wait till we get back in and I can make desserts for the oneg. Takes a few minutes. A little noisy, but this is the important part. I love to bake, and I'd love to have you over. It's been a difficult year. We're getting there. Okay, stiff peaks, almost. Not difficult. The good news is you do not have to bake this cheesecake. As you can see, it's got stiff peaks. Stiff is good. Okay. And now we're going to add the cream cheese. I brought it to room temperature. It's a lot. It's a lot of good ingredients, but you know you don't eat the whole thing. You only eat a little bit. And we add the sour cream. And this is what makes it an Israeli cheesecake, I do believe. We're going to whip it up for another minute. Is that a cup? 2 cups. I'll share the recipe with you later. All right, here we go. So now we have the cheese, the cream cheese, the sour cream, the heavy cream, the sugar, the vanilla pudding, and the vanilla extract. What could we bear? Looks good. I think we're almost done. Was that difficult or was that easy? Okay. We're going to fill the crust that we already prepared. Certainly is rich, but it is light, and you don't eat the whole thing. Can I lick? Go lick. Okay, I think we're almost done. We smooth it out, make it look good. How fabulous is this, huh?
It's fabulous.
I love to bake desserts because people like.
Roberta, you're making me hungry.
The best part is when I can.
My photographer is
my
Karen
friends
Siegel.
and my family enjoy the dessert.
I got paid with a piece of the cake.
So what makes a cheesecake
So now we have the filling, we have the crust.
a
and the
normal
only
cheesecake?
we are missing is the crumbs for the top.
A normal cheesecake
The
is
crumbs
baked
is
in
the
the
same
oven.
cookie crumb recipe from the bottom, but it's been made into crumbs.
Usually in a water bath, and it's a whole different thing. It takes an hour or more.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes out, it's a different consistency. It comes out heavy.
Yeah.
This is light.
This is the one that
Wasn't
Shulam
difficult. Was that difficult? That was not difficult.
on
Shulam
Netflix.
tried to get the date with the cheesecake, but it didn't succeed.
Well, he didn't appreciate shit.
That's so true. It's so true.
Everybody was
Amazing.
looking for him, and he just kept eating.
Really good.
Mhm.
That's
Oh,
so
it's
sweet. Thank
divine.
you, Roberta.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Hag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you, Cantor, for being with us.
Thank
Cantor's,
you, Cantor Friedlander.
see you
Thank you,
tomorrow.
rabbis. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.